features of Burp that I'll explain real quick that you can use that could help with other parts of testing here. So some of the main functionality of Burp Suite is the Swiss Army knife. It's got way more features than the average person ever needs, and they keep bolting it on. So I know the UI looks cluttered, but the main things that we're going to want to use are proxy intercept, which we've seen already. That's where Burp is actually going to stop, drop, or modify traffic, the history, the sitemap, and then the tabs at the top, decoder, repeater, and intruder. So one thing with the intercept, if you turn intercept on and then try to go to a different page, you'll see that it hangs. We saw that demonstrated, and Burp will actually ask you, do you want to forward this request or drop this request? But one thing that's really cool you can do is actually modify it. Click in there and you can change things. You can change what's being sent and then hit forward and send it on. So intercept is good if you know you need to stop the browser from sending something and modify it. And one thing that's extremely useful is you can also modify the responses as they come back from the server. So if you have a request stuck in the intercept, if you right click, do intercept response to this request, Burp will also intercept the response coming back, and you can tamper with a response from the server before it gets sent to your browser. So you can intercept and modify in both directions. The history we've seen, sitemap we've seen. If you see any encoded data, you can highlight the text, right click, and say send to decoder. And the decoder has a lot of built-in popular encoding mechanisms. So if you see messy looking data and you paste it in there and hit decode as and choose the right encoding, the decoder tab lets you encode and decode data. So that's useful if you come across something that looks like it might be base 64 encoded or anything like that. And then the repeater tab is where, if you'd like to, you can resend requests over and over again and try modifying them. If you right click anything in Burp and hit send to repeater, it will paste the HTTP in this tab. And every time you hit send, Burp just replays it. But this is also fully editable. So if you'd like the opportunity to try changing things and see what happens, this is where a lot of that happens within Burp, is modifying things in repeater, hitting send, it'll show you the response on the side. So you can send things and see how responses might come back. So which ones are you guys working on? Or looking at anything interesting?
I was gonna try to send a credit to Batman, see what happens then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to steal money.
Does anybody see where it says welcome the Batcave, Mr. Wayne?
No, it sounds like someone got into the Batcave.
No, I didn't even get the Burp Suite installed. Yeah, I got it as a shell script, and I haven't. I was just looking at the from the login page, going to using Firefox Dev Tools. I copied out source code, the last line of source code, into VS Code. I'm trying to parse through and go through wherever there's an open bracket, bring it down to the next line, and kind of parse out the code. But towards the end of the code, there's a spot where basically once you click on that button and you're in, it does say welcome the it's got the twice, Batcave, Mr. Wayne. So, and then there's a Giphy image that I'm not about to click on, but there's supposed to be some type of link there. So
nice. I like the technique. Like we were just talking about, just looking through source code. You can glean so much, either secrets or features that maybe shouldn't be unlocked, but they have to be loaded in the browser to work. So it's there, but it's not rendered. So you found the resources related to the Batcave, but the challenge is, can you get into the Batcave just through the browser in Burp? Can you actually get that to load?
Yeah, because mainly as far as running the shell script, I didn't know where exactly it's gonna. Yeah, I'd rather have control of where something gets installed or
Yeah.
located, as opposed to just letting it do its own thing. And again, because anybody could write something inside of there, and it gets put somewhere else.
Yeah, understandable. So if you have the jar, where I thought I just downloaded this. Anyways, once you have the jar, it should be as easy as just java-jar, and then you give it the Burp Suite jar file, and it'll pop up as a Java app standalone. I've done that all the time. That's how it works on like Kali and other Linux distros.
Okay.
So looking at the JavaScript, that enter Batcave button, there's the function is unusual. It's like e.apply, and then it just says this and arguments.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get any more specific than that.
Yeah, so it's not a straightforward JavaScript. I guess I can give you a hint that Batcave is React, and so I don't know how far, or I don't know if you've like done much in React and like how you can distribute React applications, but React gets kind of bundled together and mangled by JavaScript, and so it's really hard to read, but it is React.
I tried to edit the body in the authorize saying his Batman is true or something.
I like the idea.
Yeah, because I did get Batman as false to return out of the server response, but I don't know how to set Batman as true going in.
I like the trains of thought. Remember, you are in control of all the data that comes to and from your browser.
Hey Ronnie, I'm still trying to understand most of it, but I mean the JavaScript and React, but I'm not sure where I could go to try and. I know that we could look at the source page, but I don't know if there's some other places where I can try to look to see how the web page, like the mechanics of it.
Yeah, so I'll caution everyone: you shouldn't that ugly JavaScript that the React is loading is using a module called Webpack, and it bundles a bunch of JavaScript together and makes it really hard to read. You don't need to go down that rabbit hole. Trying to like debug or deobfuscate Webpacked JavaScript is a major pain, and it's not necessary for this. So as long as you kind of just recognize that, oh, it is a JavaScript client-side application, what's much more important and what we're using Burp for is controlling the communications that happen between the browser and the server. So the actual HTTP requests and responses that go back and forth. So on all of the pages or the things that you're clicking around, pay attention to what you're seeing get sent and what's coming back from the server. And all of the vulnerabilities that we are testing for can be identified and exploited just by modifying and tampering HTTP traffic within Burp. So if you guys want to follow along, but if you're working on your own, no big deal. I'll just show some of the quick functionality of Burp to like modify and tamper HTTP. So if intercept is off, anything I click, you can see it populates my history tab, but it's not actually stopping anything. If I'd like to, what I can do is when I know that I'm about to send something and I want to actually modify it, I can turn intercept on temporarily. And then when intercept is on, I'll put something in here. And let's say I didn't know what the registration code was. If I register it, Firefox hangs, but I see the request that was just sent. So I can actually see my post to /register, and I can see the data I put here. And what I can do here is actually modify it and change the code here and change my identity, or I could try putting like other bad things in there and then hit forward. And so I actually modified that HTTP before it left my browser and went to the server. If we go back, it didn't work. That registration code was bad. The other way I can do that is if I see in my history here that I see the post request on the tabs here, because I edited it, I see original. This is what my browser tried to send. Edited, which is how I edited it in that intercept tab, and the response. Any of these requests I can also right click in and hit send to repeater. And repeater lets me send a request over and over again and take a look at the response. So every time I hit send, I get the same response. But I can change things in here and hit send and I get the same response. So if I know what that, let's go back to register. I'll turn intercept off. We know that this is the correct code. So if I copy this and go to repeater, I can see, I keep sending this request. I keep getting a thing that says bad registration code. If I actually put the correct registration code in here and hit send, I get a different response. And now I've been moved temporarily and I've been redirected to the home page. And what this did as well was actually set 2 cookies for me, 2 session identifiers. And so those are the cookies that are now associated with my account after I've logged in. So that's 2 ways you can kind of modify data as it leaves. You can either intercept it in real time and modify it, or after the fact, just find a request and try to replay it and see if see how the response comes back. And then the other thing that you can do within Burp Suite is I'll just put some dummy data in here. This is what I was showing earlier, is if I have intercept on and I try to send a request, Burp is going to ask me, do you want to send this? I can forward it, I can drop it, or I can modify it. But the other thing I can do is right click and do intercept the response to this request. So I won't modify it, but Burp is now holding on to the response that came back from the server. And so Firefox still thinks it's loading, but this is the response that came back from the server. And I can modify this. So if I came down here to where it says bad registration code, and I changed it instead to say hello world foobar, and then forwarded that on, and I'll turn off intercept now. I actually modified what my browser saw from the server, and my browser interpreted my changes as I sent them back to the browser. So with Burp, you can request things as they go out, or sorry, you can modify things as they go outbound, or you can modify things as they come inbound.
So that was like the one pop-up thing that you showed, the example? Where it just put the number 1?
Oh, yep. So sort of, yeah. What I could do if I wanted is, let's try this again. Let's go back to register. Of course, I forgot to, I'll turn intercept on. I'll submit this. I will say intercept the response to this request. I'll forward it. Here's the response that came back. If I'd like to, what I could do right here is add in some content injection or cross-site scripting, and then forward that onto my browser. And I got the pop-up box or the alert to appear in my browser.
100 million credits now.
So that's a demonstration of how I could, manually inject content. This isn't a cross-site scripting vulnerability though, what I just showed, because we did it to ourselves. In a cross-site scripting, remember, we always need to like coerce someone. We want to do it to somebody else. So it's not very likely that I would, send someone instructions and say, hey, install Burp, configure this, then right click and then copy and paste this code and do all of this, right? There's too many steps. What cross-site scripting needs to be is it needs to just happen automatically when they visit a page or they click a link. There is cross-site scripting in here on some of the other pages that you should be checking out. If you recall, like reflected cross-site scripting, can we send special characters to the server and do those special characters come back and load into the page? And then can we abuse that to actually like pop up an alert box?
What is it when it's talking about the cross-origin anonymous?
Not sure. Where do you see that?
Something on in Burp to show me hidden fields, and I found one on Wikipedia. I don't know what it means. I don't know what anything means.
There are some links to Wikipedia. I don't know if anyone's explored the villains database or the villains search. But if you were to search for the Joker, there's a link to more information on Wikipedia right there.
Working on it.
No, you're on the right path. Yeah. If you can figure out what the application is doing to determine, am I Batman or am I not Batman? Is there a way that we can trick it?
Anybody been able to look into local storage at all? Is it holding a username?
technically we have like about 20 minutes left for what was scheduled, and then I'm sure everyone wants a lunch break if you haven't eaten yet. I guess I'll throw it out there as just an options for the class. We can either I can let you all keep working on this, poking around at it. I can run through some of the examples and or show you some of the vulnerabilities, or I could just leave it up and let you work on it the rest of the day or next week and come back and show them or something like that, or share some documentation after the fact. What are people's preferences?
I'd prefer if you ran through some of the vulnerabilities here.
Can you tell us what the secret key is for?
Well, that's your code to get into all the Justice League bases. It doesn't serve a purpose in the app itself. It's just supposed to be secret.
Gotcha.